Now be ready second time. I'll call the member for Newtown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to speak briefly on the Betting Tax Legislation Amendment Bill 2015. As the House has already heard, my Greens colleague Jamie Parker has outlined why we, the Greens, oppose this bill. But I wanted to stand and put on the record my complete disgust, to express my disgust at the fact that we are seeing the government and the Labor opposition joining hand in hand to provide millions of dollars of tax concessions to the racing industry with this bill. The question has to be asked, who benefits? Is it the vulnerable people that are struggling to make ends meet, that are struggling with housing affordability across our city? Is it the parents and the children that are struggling to see the costs to public education and the lack of investment within public education? Is it the sick and elderly that are wanting more services and more support within our community? It appears to be that what this legislation is doing, it doesn't just appear to be, it actually is, taking money away from the things that these people need, from the community needs, the reason why we are here, which is to represent the interests of community, and instead take those millions of dollars and provide them to the racing and gambling industry. It is disgusting, and I was disgusted when I saw in the lead up to the election campaign the Labor Party announce their support for these tax concessions, and it is appalling that we are in this place providing millions of dollars of tax concessions to the racing industry when there are so many more important needs to be spent on within this community. I was going to just address briefly the member for Barwon and his comments to suggest that the Greens opposing this bill is somehow un-Australian or somehow in support of a nanny state. To make it clear to the member for Barwon that, and as has been talked about by previous members, that I spent my childhood growing up going to the races in Adelaide. I used to spend the weekend at the Oakbank races. It used to be one of my favourite times of the year. We would go for the weekend. You'd go in a family group, you'd cook breakfast at the barbecue, and then you'd watch the races and you would be there. Since that time, I have been enlightened by the fact that actually watching horses hide behind a screen and get shot because they ran in Oakbank races, the jump races which see the damage to horses done, is something that I can no longer support. As many of those that support the protection of animals and animal rights in our community is something that, while I enjoyed it as a fun festival, and it was much more about the carnival rides than it was about watching the horse racing for me at that stage, the reality is that the damage to the horses, the rights of animals in those circumstances are not acceptable and is of a huge risk. And I can say that I come from a family that are proud punters that enjoy putting a bet on the races, but again, I would say that actually in this situation, what we need to be saying is this money we should be spending on providing concessions to the racing industry? This is not about being un-Australian. This is not about supporting a nanny state. This is about saying if we have got millions of dollars here to spend, should we be providing tax concessions to the racing industry, or should we, as people that are elected to this House to represent the people in our electorates, be spending that money on the vulnerable, on the need for investment in education, investment in healthcare and investment on essential services? Because I would say that if you ask people in the community what they think we should be spending money on, they would be saying we should be spending money on those things, not tax concessions for the racing industry.